it was obvious. He was 32 or so. It was obvious he didn't know anything about Buddhism at all. But that was fine because we were asking each other more personal questions, which was really interesting, about why, he asked me why I practiced, why I kept going for so long. Was there a thread or a recognizable thread from beginning when I first started, when I was 19 to now? And one of the beauties of that situation is it's very fresh. You don't give a pre-thought out answer, or I don't anyway. You just speak and then you hear what you said, if you see what I mean. And what I said to him was, I felt right from the beginning when I encountered meditation, and I went to Japan when I was 19 to meditate in a Zen temple, was that my impulse was to move away from my superficial mind. And I didn't mean that word in a pejorative way, but just almost descriptive. The mind that goes, practical, thinking about things, not particularly negative necessarily, but just quite sort of ordinary, practical. And I just had the vision, the sense that there was another way for my mind to be, other than just on that level, which I called superficial, ordinary, but again with no pejorative, no criticism of that. But when I said, well, when I went to Japan, I meditated a lot, and it was really clear that there was another way of being, where the mind is open and expansive and clear and bright, and it has a sense of flow and progress. And that recognition of that contrast was very important to me. And that, I don't mind being superficial, as those who know me can attest. I can be very silly sometimes, but there is the other side as well. And I think one of the characteristics of this Dhyani Buddha Amoga Siddhi is that he represents that transition and the possibility of transition. That everyone has the potential to make a transition into something deeper, enlightened mind, to put it simply. And the caveat is you can always be successful if you work at it, if you make the effort. And so I just wanted to unpack that a little bit. So when you practice mindfulness and meditation, part of that process is learning about yourself, knowing what you're like, your characteristics, but on both sides actually. Things that are helpful and things in you that are not helpful. And that self-knowledge gives you the ability to have a discernment, moment to moment almost. Well, that mental state of envy or jealousy or being annoyed with someone being happy is obviously not helpful, because it cuts me off from their happiness and their potential and what's happening with them. So it's just not helpful to me. It closes me down. Just using that as an example, because envy and jealousy is one of the negative or unhelpful qualities which are Moga Siddhi counters in a way. So then you start to get a sense of being able, more and more able, actually, to see when someone is growing and developing, and to go, yes, that's fantastic. You know, they're making an effort. It might be difficult. They might go up and down, but that sense of gladness and rejoicing, enthusiasm, when you see people actually engaging. And then I think that part of that wisdom is seeing that, is keeping on reminding yourself that everyone has the potential. Now, with this guy on the bus yesterday, we joked about even people in Dalston. It was a joke, yeah. If you've been to Dalston, you might know what we meant. It can be a bit on the rough side. So it's just, but it's parodying an attitude of actually you turn things around. Where you think, oh, no hope for them, to, yeah, actually they're having a hard time, or they've got issues, or they're venting in a certain way, but the potential for real development and growth is there. And you keep on reminding yourself about that. And that, if you are at a place in your life where you doubt yourself, where actually it's the opposite of that, where you think, well, everyone can grow except me, then you turn that around, because you're in it as well. You know, the potential is there for you as well. So this is quite an interesting thing to look at. Do you think, yeah, everyone, of course, enlightenment, everyone can get enlightenment, and then a little voice, except for me. You've got, you need to look at that and look at the principle. And, well, if the principle applies to everyone else, it must apply to me. Why am I so special that I can't grow and develop? So you turn it around, and you start to get this even sense that everyone in their own way can grow and develop and grow. So out of this, you start to get within yourself a sensitivity to the flow of your own development, the flow of your own positive qualities. You get a sensitivity to when you're actually clearer or brighter or more positive, and you, as it were, honor it in yourself. This isn't big-headedness or bigging yourself up. It's not that. It is just being realistic. You know, actually, there's been a shift. You know, I can feel the shift. And that, as it were, personal confirmation of that shift gives you confidence, which helps you, in a way, have energy to keep practicing. So this, in a way, is based on something which I don't really want to go into in detail, but a sense of everything that you do, either consciously or unconsciously, has an effect on you. I mean, everyone's heard the word karma and karma fruit, usually, but there is a way of understanding karma as it's a mental or emotional or a physical or a social action that in some way affects you. It has a fruit. So when, to use the positive, so you start to get a sensitivity to that principle of change and conditioning actually in your life, rather than just as a theory. You know, so conditioned arising or conditioned co-production is the translation usually of the principle. And it's the primary, one of the two main primary principles of Buddhism, is how things work in the world. So actually having more of a direct personal sense of how it works with you is very important. You know, so I was on a train. No, actually, I was on a bus recently in Italy, and the plane was late, the bus was late, the train was late, and it was going to take a long time for me to get where I wanted to go, and I just didn't know what to do. Yeah, Italian rubbish speaking. So there was a woman there, and I just said, "Are you in the same boat?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm with you. Well, can we do this together? Because I just don't know how to do this." And she was amazing. She took my phone and she just put all these apps on my phone and bought tickets for me for bus and train. And it was, I mean, the competence and the response to my situation was so wonderful. And I said, "What do you do?" And she said, "Well, I work in accident and emergency." "And you are an emergency." And I said, "Great, yeah, put me in the seat." So, but it was so clear that she had an altruistic mode. She was on, she could look after herself quite clearly. She meditated actually, and she did Tai Chi, and she was aware, but she had this amazing altruism, and actually her main job was teaching A and E departments how to function when there's a big emergency. Yeah. And it was just amazing to see it in operation, you know. And she said, "You and I now have to run." And it was 33 degrees, right? And I said, "Fine." She said, "We're going to run for the train." So I said, "Fine." So she's fitter than me. She takes off and I'm behind her. We arrive at the station. She said, "This is complex. You can't buy a ticket because the train is late. They won't let you buy a ticket when the train is late, but you have to have a ticket. Otherwise they'll fine you a ridiculous amount of euros." She said, "Give me your phone again." So, fine. "What's your code, password, everything?" Fine. I trusted her implicitly. I know. It was just so obvious she wasn't going to run off with all my savings. And she bought my ticket in a particular way using an app, and pressed by just as the late train came in. And we got on the train together, and I asked her, I said, "Do you consider yourself to be a lucky person?" And she said, "Oh, I'm really lucky. And everything just goes smoothly for me, you know." And I thought, it's obvious why. You know, this is her good karma, fruit things go well for her because she's constantly creating positive engagements, communications, helping not just me, but, people in very severe situations. And I thought, this is, actually a really good example of karma in action. And she was a happy person. Actually, it was really clear. Yeah. So I thought it was a very good example that if you pay attention to yourself, you learn from your experience, you look after yourself, you look after others, it creates change. And you are that flow of change. Yeah. And that the wisdom really of Amoga Siddhi is that is the truth. You will succeed in all of these positive qualities if you make an effort. Putting it slightly more colloquially, if you take yourself on, you take responsibility for yourself, you take the initiative rather than whinging and blaming. Take yourself on, and then things, and then shifts and changes happen. So that is the wisdom of Amoga Siddhi. And part of that is just understanding that for yourself as a result of your own experience. But you can, as I did with that woman, you can see it in others. Sometimes it's easier to see in others. But anyway, the understanding starts to emerge that success is inevitable as a result of good intentions and effort and application. And the understanding gets converted into real life doing. Yeah. So, I wanted to just say a few words about something which is very central in Buddhist tradition. Like, you have two things that you would have heard about from the Buddha's life. One was his going forth. So his going forth, quite in a practical and literal way, was him leaving home. But going forth is much more than that. It's not just about leaving home. Sometimes one can't leave home, financially, rent in London and so on and so on. But the going forth is going forth into a more taking initiative and keeping initiative in one's life, and letting go of seeing and letting go of conditioned habits, things that you picked up from early on in your life, tendencies, seeing the habit, but you've taken it on. Okay, so it had, someone told you something, you are like this, and you take it on, and then you realize, no, I'm not like that, or you should be like that, and you realize, no, I shouldn't be like that. You start to look at your conditioning freshly, and you go, in a way, you go forth from your habits and your patterns, and it's a sense of progress in your life from being stuck to fluidity and flow and creativity. in your life. Yeah. So this idea of taking yourself on and taking your habits on is in a way a lifetime's work. I see things in myself that I was doing when I was 7, some positive and some not so positive, and I can see the traces of them. Yeah, some I've really worked at letting go of them, and some I've held on to because they were very positive. Yeah, and I can see that sense of development, both letting go and cultivating. So I think that this is very important in one's life, being aware of what helps you and what doesn't help you that you do. Yeah. And I mentioned briefly, it just comes to mind because it just, to me, I see it a lot in my age group, people whinging and blaming and moaning. I know some of you have heard me talk about this. It drives me nuts. Oh, but there are 2 buses coming along at the same time. Why can't they, adjust them? That you actually, you see a pattern of blame or whinging or it's their fault, and you take on, well, what's my part in this? What am I doing? Yeah. What's a more positive attitude? So I'm going to just finish with very briefly, with a little thing that happened the other day. So I had to call an ambulance in the middle of the night, and they took me to hospital. And in the ambulance, I was talking with one of the ambulance people, and we started talking about meditation. And so on the one hand, she said, well, I think you just had a stroke. And on the other hand, she said, well, you teach me how to meditate. And I said, great. So all the way right into the ward, I was teaching her what we did in the first half before the tea break. And she got it. I mean, she wasn't just going, yeah. She really got it. So you can have both. You can have difficulty and you can have wonderful things happening almost at the same time. And it was fine. I did have a stroke, but it didn't affect me. So I'm fine. You don't have to worry about it.